for Mr. Putin, does he really care about all that? Is that a game? I mean, a game of courts, of trials and everything, more or less? Or do you really, as a person and as a professional, do you really believe that it somehow will in any way touch him, in any way make his life harder? He deserves fully that, but is that real?
That's a very difficult question in international law. And I think to answer your first question, does Putin and Russia care about international law and law in general? Yes and no. No, in the sense that they don't observe international law, they violate international law, they commit international law crimes in Ukraine, but they also use law to provide this veneer of legality to their actions. There's a reason why Putin is referring to Kosovo opinion, to Kosovo precedent, why there are constitutional changes to support the actions that are done by Putin on the domestic level. So in a way, it's important for Putin to create this narrative that Russia is acting according to international law. Whether arrest warrant, for example, or international law makes his life harder, yes, in the sense that he is not traveling to BRICS summit in South Africa because there is a arrest warrant. But the most difficult and delicate questions in international law is the question of enforcement, because it's very closely related to political will. And ultimately, whether we will see Putin at the Hague, at the International Criminal Court, will depend on whether the states, the parties to the Rome Statute, to the ICC, have the political will to arrest him if he finds himself on their territory.
Well, it takes more than political will to arrest somebody like Putin, no matter how big criminal he is. As we know, Putin now is a suspect in the deportation of Ukrainian children case. Some lawyers say that this suspicion is the easiest for proving, and Russian dictator finally might be also suspected and accused in other crimes. Do you think this is true? Do you think that this terrible crime of abducting Ukrainian children might help the ease to prove it, might help to prove some other cases?
Well, Putin and Russian Federation does not conceal the evidence of this crime, where they are declaring their actions in front of the whole world. It's official policy of Russian Federation, and that's why for the prosecutor of the ICC, it's easy to establish the connection between the deportation of Ukrainian children that happens on the ground and the responsibility of the leadership of Russian Federation. But of course, it's only one of the crimes that can be imputed to Putin, because we can also see some kind of systemic and widespread nature of, for example, targeting of civilian infrastructure. There are also indications that torture camps, arbitrary executions are carried out according to the plan. And the existence of the plan, systematicity, and widespread character can indicate that this is part of the policy. It is also important to mention that Putin is responsible for the crime of aggression. And this is the crime of starting the war and carrying and conducting the war against Ukraine. So ordering, planning, initiating use of force by Russia against Ukraine.
Okay. All right, thank you very much for this answer. Let us discuss now the tribunal for Comrade Putin. As I mentioned before, in early March 2023, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for the Russian president and the Commissioner of Children's Rights in Russia, Maria Lvova-Belova.
The International Criminal Court has issued 2 warrants of arrest in the Ukraine situation. For Vladimir Putin,
Russia's unlawful war of aggression against the people of Ukraine
opened the floodgate for 100,000 of other international crimes.
In turn, the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Russia has announced that International Criminal Court Judge Tomoko Akane, who issued a warrant for the arrest of Russian President Vladimir Putin, is federally wanted in Russia. Well, that means that Russian police are looking for a judge of an international court on an unnamed criminal charge. In May 2023, the investigative committee of Russia had already charged in absentia, of course, another ICC judge, Rosario Salvatore Aitali, charging him with illegal detention and preparation for an attack on a representative of a foreign state. Also, he was declared a federally wanted person in Russia, just as it was the case with ICC prosecutor Karim Khan. All these mutual charges and accusations, why? Do they have any perspective for both sides? I mean, I already asked that question, but let us go deeply into the game. Do we, as a civilized world and Russia, have any other way than to play this game? Like, the terrible crime is perpetrated in Ukraine, and we're issuing a warrant. And this warrant is what? They're all making fun of it in Russia. Tell us, as a professional, what to do, how to change the situation.
Well, we did speak about it. It's very closely related to whether the states are prepared to support the International Criminal Court. International organizations are created by the states, and they don't have their own police force. Their hands and their legs are states that are members of these international organizations. So it will depend on the support and the will of the states to act upon this arrest warrant.
But do you believe there will be enough of that will?
I think that this is a matter of persistent work of us, Ukrainians and Ukrainian government, to keep gathering this support and keep fighting for the progress in international law and for the application and enforceability of international law to the crimes that are committed in Ukraine. And this initiative of creating a tribunal for prosecuting crime of aggression committed by the military and political leadership of Russian Federation is part of that struggle.
All right, thank you very much. Let us hope that will be the case, that the collective will win in the end. In Rostov-on-Don, trials against Ukrainian POVs started. The fighters of the battalions Aidar and Azov will be tried in Russia. Ukrainian soldiers were accused of belonging to a unit of the armed forces of Ukraine and performing their direct duties. The very fact that this trial violates the Geneva Conventions and is illegal in its consequences, resulting conclusions are illegally void, means nothing to Russia, of course. All these fictitious sentences of oppressive pocket judiciary of Putin will not interfere with the process of returning our people home. Any punishment available for a country that violates the Geneva Convention, do you think, Gayane, that this punishment really exists for the whole country, for the authorities?
In this situation, we have to distinguish between Russia as a state and responsibility of Russia as a state for violating international law, and then criminal responsibility of individuals who carry out specific war crimes. So for the moment, there is no international institution or international court where Russia could be held responsible directly for the violation of Geneva Conventions. Certain violations of international humanitarian law, as it's also known, can amount also to human rights violation. And there are such institutions as European Court of Human Rights where these can be adjudicated. But on the other hand, we have this instrument of bringing someone to individual criminal responsibility, the person who is ordering, or judges even who are conducting these unlawful trials that are also on and of themselves war crimes. So the way international law works here is to actually punish the individual for carrying out these actions that amount to violations of Geneva Conventions. And we here have, for example, domestic trials, or again, we have domestic trials in foreign countries that have been initiated, or we have International Criminal Court that also has a jurisdiction to prosecute war crimes.